Hi guys, we have three themes in Indian history for our board exam. Theme 1 and Theme 2, these two books uh, discuss about two important aspects of Indian history, religious aspect and political aspect. When we talk about political aspect, it starts with 16 Mahajanapadas followed by Mauryan empires. Then we have Harshas, Nandas, then some local other kings. Then it was followed by um, Rajputs, local Rajas ruling in North India. The same time in South India, it was ruled by the chieftains of Chola, Cheras, and Pandyas. And then it was, in North India, it was a turn of Delhi Sultanates, coming to rule. At the same time, there were some sultans and Vijayanagara Empire, which was very prevalent in South India. Then it was overtaken by Sher Shah Suri, Sur dynasty for some years. Then it was completely taken over by another very important empire called Mughal Empire. So this is how the political history. Then Mughal Empire, it was passed to the Europeans, British rule. Then after the British rule, we know the freedom struggle for India was controlled and you know shipped by the Congress. Then we got the independence in 1947. So the third theme, the third book explicitly discusses with the advent of Europeans to the end of independence and the constitution making. So for the first two themes, politically we have discussed. Now what about religious? See, first time religion, Brahmanical tradition religion, which was questioned and questioned by two important religion from India, Buddhism and Jainism. Then this same revolution happened even in Islam when Islam was brought by Delhi Sultanate. The same thing was no, the same thing happened in Islamic religion also with the with the advent of Sufi saints, Sufism in Islam. So then we are the Islam continued for many years in India. Then it was Christianity which was sometimes prevailing in India. Then afterwards, after the independence, it's all we have today. So we have been studying both political and religious aspects intermingled or intertwined in all the chapters. So the last chapter we had a political, how the state, the kings gave patronage to a particular religion. We studied in every chapter we studied about religious aspect as well as the political aspect. This is how the chapter revolves around in first theme and second theme. Now we are into a new chapter, that is ninth chapter, since the eighth chapter stands deleted for you in this session for your board exam. So we are skipping the eighth theme. We are directly moving to the ninth theme, the kings and the chronicles. It's purely talks about the Mughal court, Mughal empire between 16th and 17th century. So I think the brief introduction is enough for you to understand. This is all about the political aspect. Somewhere here and there, religious aspect will come. Otherwise, it's purely a political aspect chapter. So this chapter talking about 16th and 17th century Mughal Empire. See why this chronicles. Chronicles, what is written in the introduction, I am just explaining. The Mughals, gave importance to commissioning of writing the incidents, the history of their life. They have appointed a lot of historians to write their way of life, their administration, their way of religious belief, and the way they tax the people. Everything they wanted to be recorded so that the future generation would come to know about their valor, their mighty, their glorious rule. So this is how the chronicles meaning accounts of recorded events in a very sequence. So historians, chronicles, as they present a continuous chronological record of events, that is chronicles. Okay, they present a continuous chronological record of events. So, chronicles are indispensable, unavoidable source of any scholar wishing to write a history of the Mughals. So, chronicles, if you want to write about, if you want to write a thesis, a study on Mughals, you need to depend on the chronicles written by many of the historians. So, this is how it is. So, we are going to study about this. Now, this topic is all about how the Mughals began their way of rule in India, how their empire got the foot in Indian soil. So this is how we are going to see. And if a question comes, anything regarding the origin of Mughals in Indian territory or Indian history, so this is all you have to write. I don't think so. A particular question can be asked on this, but I would like you to write some of the points, which may turn out to be a one marker. Otherwise, a question also can come, explain the origin of Mughals in Indian history. So this is how you have to write. Okay, that's the first question. I would like you to write this question as a three marker. Okay. The name Mughal derives from Mongol. Last year we studied in class 11, no Mongols. So the Mughal, the word they are now we are using this Mughal word in India for the Islamic rule in India. It is just because the Mongol, the name Mongol. Though today the term evokes the grandeur of an empire, Mongol Empire, it was not the same the rule of the dynasty chose for themselves. They referred to themselves as Timurids, the descendants of the Turkish ruler Timur on the paternal side. Father's side, the Mughals claimed themselves as the descendants of Timur, as he is the Turkish ruler. Okay, so from Turkey, so Turkish ruler. Then the Mughals in India, who all ruled in India, they claimed themselves as the descendants of Timur from the paternal side. Whereas in the maternal side, we will be studying about this from no, Babur, the first Mughal. He was related to the first Mughal empire, that is Babur. India's first Mughal empire is Babur, very important. So he is related to Genghis Khan from mother's side. So we have both Timur as well as Genghis Khan, both the great leaders the world has ever witnessed. And these two leaders, the Mughal, which came to the Mughals who came to rule in India, they are related to Timur from father's side and to related to Genghis Khan from mother's side. Thus, he spoke Turkish and referred derisively to the Mongols as barbaric hordes. So he was speaking Turkish. That is why this one Babar was speaking Turkish. That is why he was telling that Mongols are barbaric people, very uncivilized people, because he was more to his father's side, not the mother's side. But mother's he was related to Genghis Khan also. Point to be noted. During the 16th century, Europeans used the term Mughal to describe Indian rulers. Why Mughal word used for instead of Mongol? Because Europeans wanted to distinguish between the Mongols and the rulers who ruled in India. दोनों को ये differentiate करना चाहते थे, so they gave a term called Mughal. मंगोल से थोड़ा सा ये लोग tongue twist होके Mughal they gave it to the Indian rules of rulers. Over the past century, the word has been frequently used, even like Rudyard Kipling's book called Jungle Book, very important book. It is being filmed in many times. So a very important character in Jungle Book written by Rudyard Kipling. उसमें जो main character है Mowgli. So the name Mowgli given to that character inspired by this Mughal. Okay, inspired by this word Mughal. Very important one marker. The empire was carved out a number of regional states in India. We all know political alliances with the Mughals and local chieftains, and everybody, सबका some people alliances में आए, कुछ लोगों को हरा के उनको उनका territory लिया. So it all happened through conquest or through alliances, political alliances. Thus, the Mughal Empire became a very big, vast empire. The founder of this empire is Zagiruddin Babar. No, he was driven from Central Asian homeland, Fargana, by warring Uzbeks. ये Uzbeks community था. Uzbeks community के साथ they had Turkish and Uzbeks. They had a war, and Uzbeks defeated him and drove him. वहाँ से इसको भगाया गया. So he ran to Indian side, Sindh river side for life. So he established himself at Kabul. He came to Afghanistan. Up to Afghanistan, he established himself there. In 1526, he was pushed further into Indian subcontinent. Kabul से भी उसको भगाया गया, मतलब he was sent away from Kabul. Thus he reached Indian subcontinent, that is near a Sindhu river, and entered into India. Fine. This is how he entered into India. His successor, Nazruddin Humayun, another person, his successor, Nazruddin Humayun, son of Babur, expanded the frontiers of the empire. He expanded little more, got into deeper into India like Punjab and somewhat Rajasthan, but lost to the Afghan leader that time, Sher Shah Suri. Sur dynasty was there in India when he entered. After Delhi Sultanate, for 30 years, Sur dynasty was there in India, especially North India. So when Sher Shah Suri was ruling, Humayun tried to enter into Indian territory and he was defeated, and no, he was dragged into exile. Okay, then Humayun took refuge in the court of Safavid ruler Iran. He was in Iran for some years. In 1555, Humayun defeated the Surs and died. Just 1 year he ruled in India after defeating the Surs. Then he ruled for 1 year. Then he died. Then his son Jalaluddin Akbar, he became the emperor, and many say that all the credit goes to this great person called Akbar for everything, not only for expanding but also consolidating his empire and making it the largest, strongest, and richest kingdom of his time. So Akbar was credited with all this. It was Akbar who popularized and made a Mughal empire a great and strongest and largest empire of the time. So Akbar succeeded in extending the frontiers to the empire to the Hindu Kush mountain, not to the Hindu Kush mountain, and checked all. Hindu Kush mountain is located on the boundary line of India and Afghanistan. Okay, so and he also checked that Uzbeks doesn't get inside. Even Safai's rule, कोई भी अंदर नहीं आए. He had a very strong frontier. उसका force बहुत strongly frontier में लगा रखा था, so nobody was able to enter. So Akbar had three fairly able successors in the form of Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. After Akbar, he had three important, very famous, and able successors in the form of these three rulers, and much of their characters all they had their characters different, varied. Under them, the territorial expansion continued, even at a reduced phase, not like Akbar had, but they had. No, they also expanded a little bit. The three rulers maintained and consolidated the various instruments of governance. They, some people, what Akbar, formulated as an instrument of governance. Some of the taxation system, ruling administration, जो भी वो systems है उसको ये लोग बरकरार रखे. Some people kept it, some people remodified and modified it like that. They had it. During the 16th and 17th century, the institutions of an imperial structure were created. What are the some of the imperial structure like administration and taxation, and the main center, visible center of Mughal power is the court. Court is a very important, essential part of Mughal administration. Court is the place from where everything emanates, everything gets into the system. So court is the place where everything is decided. Here the political alliances and relationships were forged, status and hierarchies defined, political system devised, everything is done here. The combination of military power and conscious policy to accommodate whom to encounter, everything was decided here in this place called court. In 1707, following the death of Aurangzeb, the power of the dynasty diminished. In place of the vast apparatus empire controlled from Delhi, Agra, Lahore, the regional powers slowly got reduced, and symbolically, the prestige of Mughal ruler did not, just the prestige. I am from the Mughal family, करके कुछ rulers थे, but they did not have much aura, much much power to rule. In 1857, the last sign of this dynasty is the last icon of the dynasty is Bahadur Shah Zafar II was overthrown by the British. So the last Mughal emperor was the Bahadur Shah Zafar II. Very important question, and he was defeated by British and he was sent to Rangoon, Burma. Okay, so this is a brief history about Mughal Empire, how they got inside and how their rule got diminished. And this question is just I don't think so. It can be a question in your exam, but lot of one marker can be asked from this topic. क्योंकि ये क्लास लोअर क्लासेस से हम पढ़ रहे हैं इनका जो पूरा हिस्ट्री अब ये इम्पोर्टेंट इतना नहीं है जितना अभी आने वाला टॉपिक्स है. Okay, so but lot of one markers which you are well aware of from your lower classes, but even then what is given in our book should be of a fresh mind memory in your heart. So this is how you have to deal this topic. Fine, we are getting into another very important topic, the production of chronicles. How the chronicles were produced, that's the question. How were the chronicles produced? So अगर एक क्वेश्चन आया तो these two टॉपिक्स आपको समराइज करना पड़ेगा. बिफोर दैट एक शॉर्ट आंसर आ सकते हैं. It has not come in, it has not come in any of the exams, but I see it as little more important. Why were the chronicles commissioned? Why were the chronicles commissioned? ये paragraph gives the answer. Why were the chronicles commissioned? Chronicles लिखने के लिए क्यों बोला गया? Okay, so it was commissioned by the Mughal emperors, and because it was an important source for studying the empire and its courts. That's the first point. Because it was an important source for studying the empire and the court, and they were written in order to project a vision of an enlightened kingdom to all those who came under this umbrella. So it was, it was written because to project as an enlightened kingdom. इसके जैसा कोई kingdom नहीं है बताने के लिए, ठीक है. At the same time they were meant to convey, third point, convey to those who resisted the rule of the Mughal that all the resistance was destined to fail. ये बताने के लिए कि if you dare to resist this rule, you are destined to fail. ये बताने के लिए भी. Also the rulers wanted to ensure that there was an account of their rule for posterity, for the time to come. Posterity meaning for the time to come. So these are the 4 points which you need to write when, if a question is asked, why were the chronicles commissioned? Why were the chronicles commissioned? I see it as an obvious question, because it has got 4 different points to tell you why chronicles were commissioned. Now we are getting into how chronicles were commissioned. Okay, ये पैराग्राफ नहीं आएगा आंसर में, फिर भी इसमें कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट वन मार्कर है जो आपको फोकस करना पड़ेगा. वो है the titles like such as Akbar Nama, Shahjahan Nama, and Alamgir Nama. Okay, Alamgir Nama, that is why this is Akbar Nama is for Akbar, Shahjahan Nama for Shahjahan, and Alamgir Nama is for Aurangzeb. These are इसमें बाकी सब obvious है, easy है, लेकिन ये Alamgir is for Aurangzeb, which you need to know for your one marker. Fine. Now this is how the chronicles were produced. अगर question आया तो from Turkish to Persian you have to, this is the heading that you have to put, from Turkish to Persian. Actually, when the Mughal Empire came into India, the all the orders, all the chronicles, everything was written in a language called Turkish. Okay, during the time Babur was ruling, everything was written in Turkish. Even Babur Nama was written in Turkish. Okay, and under the sultans of Delhi, the flourished language, Delhi Sultanate के time में Turkish एक important language था, along the North Indian languages like Hindavi and regional languages. As the Mughals were Chagatai Turks, they were Chagatai Turks by origin. The Turkish was their mother tongue. Okay, their first ruler Babur wrote the poetry and his memoirs. Memoirs meaning Babur Nama. ठीक है, his memory about his life. That is memoirs in this language. So Babur used, even after Delhi Sultanate, Babur continued using Turkish as the court language. It was Akbar who consciously set out to make Persian as the leading language of the Mughal court. So who was the first person who made Persian as the very leading language in India? It is the Akbar. Cultural and intellectual context, how it Persian became a central language, because cultural intellectual contact with Iran, as well as a regular stream of Iranian and Central Asian migrants seeking the position of the Mughal court, might have motivated the emperor to adopt Persian as the. Why was Akbar motivated to adopt Persian as the very leading language? Because of this one marker में आ सकते हैं, because the cultural and intellectual context of Iran and the regular movement of the people, migrants from intellectuals from Iran and Central Asia, might have motivated the emperor to adopt. Persian was elevated as to a language of conferring the power and prestige to those who have command over it. Those people who speak Persian, उनको ज़्यादा prestige and power मिलता था, and it was spoken by the king and by the royal household and elite at the court. Even the court language was Persian. It became the language of the administration at all levels. Accountants, clerks, everybody was using this. So we are going. What we are discussing is Persian. It was Turkish which was used for the first time, but it was replaced by Persian, in which all the people in the court started writing, and no, Persian was the main language in writing the chronicles also in the beginning. Even when Persian was not directly used, like some of the vocabularies and idioms heavily influenced the local languages like Rajasthani, Marathi, and Tamil. So okay, so like today in no English, as English plays the import as an important role in our language, the same way Persian played an important role at that time. Like even the villages so use some of the English words, though they may not very really understand the meaning of that word, but the word comes to their mouth just no, without any proper knowing the meaning. So this is how Persian also was being used by the people, local languages. Okay, since the people using Persian in 16th and 17th century came from many different regions, subcontinent, and all that, Persian became Indianized by absorbing local idioms. So Persian was Indianized. We accepted. How it was Indianized? One best example is this: a new language called Urdu. Urdu sprang from the interaction of Persian with Hindavi. Hindavi was Indian language. Hindi, today we talk about Hindi. So Hindavi was the first language our people spoke in North India. So the interaction between Urdu, Persian and Hindavi brought a new language called Urdu, which you need to understand, very important for one marker. So Mughal chronicles such as Akbar Nama written in Persian, others like Babar, where the Babar Nama was translated from Turkish into Persian, that is Babar Nama. Memoirs, it is pronounced as memoirs. Babar's memoirs means Babar Nama. It was translated from Turkish to Persian. Translation of Sanskrit texts such as Mahabharata and Ramayana into Persian were also commissioned by Mughal emperors. Mahabharata was translated as Razmnama in Persian. महाभारता जब पर्शियन में कंप्लीटली ट्रांसलेट हो गया था, तो उसका नाम पर्शियन में रज्मनामा, बुक ऑफ वॉर्स, इट इज कॉल्ड एज बुक ऑफ वॉर्स. वन मार्कर के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. So what we have discussed in this paragraph is how the language Turkish and Persian played an important role in writing the chronicles of Mughal Empire. Okay, so that is all about this topic. Okay, Persian. So you need to write just 3-4 points. How Akbar gave importance, why he gave importance, and how it was adopted, influenced other languages, and how it was Indianized. Then ये आप example दो नहीं दो चलेगा. Okay, this Ramayana and Mahabharata and all that. How were the manuscripts? See, to write into a chronicle, you need a lot of handwritten manuscripts. First, it is all written in a manuscript. Then it was completely put into a book. Then it is called a chronicle. So all the books in Mughal Empire were manuscripts that were handwritten. The center of manuscript production is the Imperial Kitab Khana. Kitab Khana, today we can call it as translate as a library, but Imperial Kitab Khana is the place where all these manuscripts are written. Okay, it was scriptorium. That is a place. What is scriptorium can be a separate question. It is a place where the emperor's collection of manuscripts was kept and new manuscripts produced. Very important question. What is a scriptorium? Scriptorium is a place where the emperor's collection of manuscripts were kept and new manuscripts were produced. The creation, how it was created. कोई भी manuscript कैसे create किया जाता है? It involved a number of people performing variety of tasks, like paper makers were needed to prepare the papers, folios meaning papers for making manuscript, and scribes or calligraphers. Calligraphers or scribes to copy the text. These are the people who write. Then we need gilders to illuminate the pages. Pages को थोड़ा shining करने के लिए we need gilders. Then we needed painters to illustrate the scenes. Okay, we need painters. Then we need book binders to gather the individual folios, individual papers, and set them with the ornamental covers. Thus, a finished product as a precious object chronicle or a book comes out with the intellectual and intellectual wealth and beauty. So, a separate question can be asked from this: who are the people involved in bringing about a manuscript? What are the people involved in creating a manuscript? Who are all the people were involved in creating a manuscript? A separate question. See, separate questions can be asked, like even no uh, write about Persian, the leading language, no comment on the Persian as the leading language of the Mughal emperor. एक statement दे दिया 3 मार्कर में आ सकते हैं. So anything of that sort, you need to know, you need to have some points to write. The points are there in your book, the points are there what we discuss. The points should become part of your life, and that should become the part of the answer. That's it, nothing more or nothing less. Now this is about the flight of the written word. Abul Fasal, a very important historian of no, during the time of Mughal, he says that once the word is written, how much knowledge and how much wisdom it brings to the people who read. So he gives importance to the written word. That's all. Just read for yourself, and if you find something very important, underline for yourself. And I don't want to read every line because it will take more time. See what is written here. A written word gives lot of knowledge and wisdom to those people who are going to read in the years to come, generations to come. That is why if a book written for generation. So that is the thing all about. Okay, so so these are the people involved in doing this. And at the same time some of the people involved in actual production of the manuscript also got recognition from the titles, like of this calligraphers and painters. Calligraphers and painters held a high social status standing, while others like paper makers and bookbinders remained anonymous artisans. So this is also a very important question. So who are the people who were considered to be high standing within this group of people in the creation of manuscript? It is the painters and calligraphers. The rest of the people are just considered to be artisans. Now we have calligraphy, the art of the hand. What is calligraphy? Calligraphy is the art of handwriting. Was considered a skill of great importance. It was practiced using different styles. Akbar's favorite is called Akbar's favorite art of handwriting is called as Nastalik. Very very important question. What is Nastalik? A question can be asked. आप कोई नाश्ता वाश्ता मत लिख देना. Nastalik meaning art of handwriting, which was so much favorite to Akbar. Okay, so it is written in how it is written. It is a fluid style. It is written by using by a piece of trimmed reed with a tip of 5 or 10 millimeter called kalam. Okay, kalam meaning pen, we know, and dipped in the carbon ink called sihai. So the present day ink pen we call, that is what that time is called as nastaliq. So ink pen, okay, today present day ink pen is called as nastaliq, the art of writing, okay, handwriting, which was so much liked by Akbar. So ये सब ये 1 मार्कर के लिए. बाकी up to that know this paragraph where we talked about know the people involved in making the creation of manuscript, ये आपको question आएंगे. How were the chronicles produced में आप लिख सकते हैं. I think you have enough and more points to write in this. It can come in 3 marker also and 8 marker also, but you are supposed to write 8 points. Now we are getting into another very important, not so important, painted image. Not very, no, I don't think so you need to write a question on this. But painted image, those people who are willing to score more than 95 plus 100, 95 plus 100 जो भी हैं, and they are supposed to know, read and understand this topic very well. The rest of the people only which I say important 1 marker है वही underline करें, बाकी don't take much load into this. So we read in the previous, the painters were so much involved in this creating, because these are the people, chronicle narrating the events of Mughal Empire, images that describe the event as the visual form. People who cannot read but can only see, who are uneducated, can see the image and understand the meaning. So these people know visual expression both bada meaning deta tha. And the kings, the Mughals were so much of gave so much importance to the painters, because people all are not educated, all cannot read, but they can see the visual image and understand what is this, who this emperor is and how mighty and powerful he is. So paintings served not only to enhance the beauty of the book, but were believed to possess special powers of communicating ideas about the kingdom and the powers. This is the दिस इज द ब्यूटी ऑफ पेंटिंग. क्वेश्चन ये आपको अंडरलाइन करना पड़ेगा सबको. ओके, पेंटिंग का इंपॉर्टेंस. पेंटिंग्स नॉट ओनली enhance the beauty of the book, but were believed to possess special powers of communicating ideas about the kingdom and the power of kings in ways that are written medium could not. Okay, so Abul Fasal described painting as a magical art. Very very important. Who considered painting as a magical art? It is Abul Fasal. A very important question. ये paragraph important है सबके लिए. Okay, now the production of paintings portraying the emperor का image बना के ये सबको सारे book में या being he is being adored by all the people, was a great tension between the rulers and the Mughal Muslim orthodoxy, that is ulema और Mughals के बीच में एक टेंशन हुआ था, दोनों के बीच में एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होता था क्योंकि according to Islamic tradition, no human being can be portrayed. Human beings cannot be portrayed in a book or something. It is only the Prophet Muhammad who can be portrayed, and he is the perfect human being. No other human being can be portrayed. So there was a conflict between the Mughal rulers who wanted their image to be portrayed, painted, and circulated among their within their empire. But these people were not so happy with this, and thus there was always conflict between. ये पूरा पैराग्राफ में लिखा हुआ है, आप एक बार इसको पढ़ लेना. That is what is written there. We will come back to source 1 there. And yet interpretations of the Sharia changed with the time. So slowly the rule, Sharia law, talking about a body of Islam were interpreted different ways by various social groups. So many people said that we can make images of the empire. There is no problem into this. The Sharia law can accept this kind of practice. So it was later on the different interpretations were given. Mughal rulers in Asian region during centuries of empire building commissioned artists painting their portraits seen like very important ruler is Safavid kings in Iran, for example, patronized the finest artists who were trained in their workshop. The names of painters like Bihasad contributed to spreading the cultural fame of Safavid court. See, you need to know the name of these persons. Okay, so a question last year आया था इसके बारे में नहीं. Just they asked the name of the persons. That is very 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 surprising for me. One question was there last year. So they asked, okay, which who was the painter who contributed to spreading of cultural fame of Safavid court far and wide? That is Big Saad. Okay, Big Saad. He is the painter, and artists from Iran made their way to Mughal India and all that. So in case of Mir Shahid Ali and Abdus Samad, who were made to accompany Emperor Humayun to Delhi. So when Humayun came from Iran, he was accompanied by these two important painters. Okay, Mir Syed Ali and Abdus. ये दोनों painters का नाम very important है. Others migrated in search of opportunities or all that. Okay, Abul Fasal cites the emperor saying that there are many that paintings such that it's like it appears. Okay, fine, that is fine. So these are the some one markers that you need to underline, all of you. Otherwise, those who want to score more, they need to know if a question comes why there was a conflict between the ulema and the Mughal rulers with respect to painting. Then you need to explain what I have just told you. In praise of Tasveer, that is source 1, Abul Fasal is writing Art of Painting in a High Stream. He is telling that no, he is praising this Tasveer, painting ko praise kar rahe hain because drawing the likeness of anything is called Tasveer. His majesty from his earliest youth has shown a great predilection from his art, gives a very encouragement. He looks upon the study for the study, both study and amusement, for surprise as well as for future study के लिए हमें चाहिए. And each week several supervisors class imperial workshops submit before the work to done at Majesty gives reward to all that. So he is just giving importance to painting and how painting was being respected and revered in the Mughal rule. So that is the source is all about. Please read that source. Now we have two important books, Akbar Nama and Babur Nama, Badshah Nama. Okay, Akbar Nama and Badshah Nama. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन ये आ सकते हैं आपके एग्जाम में. अकबर नामा के बारे में 100% क्वेश्चन एक आ सकता है. ओके, 1 मार्कर या 3 मार्कर या 8 मार्कर. एनीवे 8 मार्कर आई डोंट थिंक सो, बट 1 मार्कर 3 मार्कर में आ सकते हैं. ठीक है. So we have Akbarnama and Basharnama, the Chronicle of the King, are the most well known. Each manuscript contained almost 150 full or double pages paintings battle. Author of the Akbarnama, Abul Fasl. Who was the author of Akbarnama? It is Abul Fasl. Grew up in the Mughal court of Agra. He was widely read in all these languages: Arabic, Persian, Greek, philosophy, Sufism. Okay, ये सब आपको पता होना चाहिए. Okay, if they put one more language here, Turkish, और आपको पूछा कि Turkish was not the language he was well versed with. And moreover, he was a forceful debater and independent thinker who constantly opposed the views of the conservative ulema. He was always questioning the conservatism of ulemas. These qualities impressed Akbar. Akbar was so much impressed by the way he debated with the ulemas, and these qualities impressed Akbar, who found Abul Fasl ideally suited as an advisor and spokesperson for his policies. So that is why he took him as an advisor. One major objective of the emperor was to free the state from the control of his main objective. Akbar's main objective was to release the state from the orthodoxy, religious ulema का जो control में दिल्ली सुल्तानेट के टाइम पे ये बहुत strong था. Ulema was so much strong and they were controlling the even the rule and the rulers. But here he wanted to free the state from this kind of control. So Abul Fasl helped him in this. In his role as a court historian, Abul Fasl both shaped and articulated the ideas associated with the reign of Akbar. Okay. Beginning in 1589, Abul Fasl worked on Akbarnama for 13 years. How many years he worked? He worked 13 years, repeatedly revising the draft he was writing and revising and all that. The chronicle is based on a range of sources. What are the things it was? It was actual records of the event, that is Wakai, official documents, and oral testimonies of the knowledge of the person. These are the things it included. Akbarnama included on all this. He started in 1589. He worked for 13 years. In this, this book, this chronicle, Akbarnama, includes variety of sources, ranges, variety of sources. What are the sources involved in this? They were actual records and official documents, even the oral testimony of the knowledgeable people. This is how he started collected the materials to write. Akbarnama is divided into 3 books. अगर क्वेश्चन अकबरनामा के ऊपर आया तो आपको यहाँ से स्टार्ट करना पड़ेगा. तो स्टार्टेड इन 1589. नो, राइट अ शॉर्ट नोट ऑन अकबरनामा. तो ये पूरा लिखना पड़ेगा यहाँ से, सेकंड पैराग्राफ से. ओके. सो it is divided into 3 books, which the first 2 are chronicles. The third one is called Aini Akbari. Very, very important. Aini Akbari is part of Akbarnama. Please note this point, because you may think that Aini Akbari is a different book. It is not a different book. It is a third book of Akbarnama. So Akbarnama has got 3 books. The first 2 books are chronicles. The third book is Aini Akbari. The first volume, the Aini Akbari का the first volume है. Aini Akbari में 2 volumes है. The first volume contains the history of mankind from Adam, that is first man called Adam to a celestial cycle of Akbar's time. Okay, from Adam to Akbar's time, 30 years of rule. The second volume closes in 46th year of Akbar. Okay, 46th ruling year, regnal year, matlab ruling year. Okay, that is 601. That is the 46th year. So second volume closes in the 46th. So only the rule is mentioned here. There, the mankind, history of mankind. Here, it is all about the rule. So Aini Akbari. The very next year, Abul Fasl fell victim to the conspiracy hatched by a Prince Salim, the son of Akbar, and was murdered by his accompaniment, who was accompanying him, Bir Singh Bundela. He was the person who was accompanying Abul Fasl, and he killed him. Okay, and he was conspired by Salim, Prince Salim, who arranged Bir Singh Bundela to kill Abul Fasl. So because Abul Fasl was so close to Akbar, and they wanted to take revenge on Akbar and Abul Fasl. Without Abul Fasl, Akbar stands somewhat negligible. So this is how Akbarnama. This is all about Akbarnama. Now Akbarnama was written to provide. It was written. Why it was written? It was written. ये भी answer में Akbarnama में आएगा. It was written to provide a detailed description of Akbar's reign मतलब rule in the traditional diachronic sense of recording political significant events across the time. Diachronic meaning traces developments over a time. मतलब over a time, maybe 30-40 years a time. Whereas synchronic account means one or several situations at one particular moment of particular time. So synchronic meaning particular time, and diachronic meaning over a time. That is the meaning. Okay, so this is Akbarnama gives a diachronic account. One marker में diachronic को उठा के synchronic डाल देंगे, then gone case. You will not, you know, one marker is you will not be able to understand. So you have to pay attention that diachronic and synchronic in the sentence. ये sentence which are the following statements are correct and incorrect में आपके exams में आ सकते हैं. So as well as in the more novel sense of giving a synchronic picture of all the aspects. So diachronic sense of political significance across the time and synchronic picture of all aspects of Akbar. Geographic, social, administrative and cultural without reference to chronology. ये दोनों chronology जो first two chronicles उसको without giving the order of this years and the year को importance नहीं देते हुए just they at the random Aini Akbari just deals not giving importance to the years but importance to the concepts and the history. Okay, in the Aini Akbari, the Mughal Empire is presented as having a diverse population consisting Hindus, Jainas, Buddhists, Muslims, and composite of culture. So it talks about the Mughal Empire having all this. Abul Fasal wrote in a language that was ornate and which attached it was very attractive language, ornate language, which attached importance to diction and rhythm. Okay, it had a lot of diction, lot of what is that we talk about when a language is so much adorned, it adorned with a lot of similes, lot of personification, and these are called poetic devices or writing devices. Everything is being attached when Abul Fasal writes something. So it the Indo-Persian style was patronized at court. There was there were large number of writers who wanted to write like Abul Fasal. He was a exemplary person. He was an ideal person for any scribe to look up to. So, people of Abul Fasal, people means a student of Abul Fasal means named Abdul Hamid Lahori. He was a student of Abul Fasal, known for the author of as the known as the author of Badshah Nama. So, who is considered to be the author of Badshah Nama? That is Abdul Hamid Lahori. Emperor Shah Jahan, hearing his talent, commissioned him to write the history. Okay, like Akbar Nama. So, Badshah Nama, written by Abdul Hamid Lahori on Shah Jahan's life, is the official history of 3 volumes. Okay, it is considered 3 volumes, 10 years each. So Lahore wrote one volume talking about 10 years of Shah Jahan's time. Okay, so Lahori wrote the first and second volumes, comprise Daftars meaning volume, first 2 decades of the empire. These volumes were later revised by Sadullah Khan, Shah Jahan's wazir. Okay, Sadullah Khan was Shah Jahan's wazir. Now, first 2 volumes were written by this person. The infirmities of old age. He was he was very old Lahori by this time. Prevented Lahori from proceeding with the third volume. So third volume was not written by him, but written by the historian Waris. Okay, another historian. His name was Waris. Waris was the person who completed the third volume. So one marker के लिए बहुत कुछ है इसमें. What are the things you need to? Abdul Hamid Lahori started he was considered as the author of Badshah Nama. He wrote the first 2 volumes and it was revised by Sadullah Khan, Shah Jahan's wazir, because he was in his old age. The person Lahori was in old age, was not able to cope up with the system. So the third volume was purely chronicled by Waris historian. Okay, so that is all about the travels of Badshah Nama, gifting the precious manuscripts. I think okay, diachronic and synchronic हो गया. Gifting the precious manuscripts was an established diplomatic custom of it's a gifting. Okay, Nawab of Awadh gifted the illustrated, okay, the well written, edited Badshah Nama to King George III in 1719. A very important fact to be. So giving a gift is a very एक किताब book देना gift के रूप में a tradition, a custom है. Since then it has been preserved in English royal collections also. It is there in England preserved. In 1994, conservation work required bound manuscript to be this made possible to exhibit the paintings. And Badshah Nama paintings were known for it has got a lot of painting. Okay, Badshah Nama considers lot of paintings. Okay, fine. So one important fact is there. Okay, Nawab of Awadh giving this gift to George. Okay, during the colonial period, British administrators began to study the Indian history and to create. Okay, when colonial they were ruling, they started giving importance to Indian history, started reading all these chronicles, and so that they can understand the people, understand the culture of the place that they are ruling. Thus, the Asiatic Society of Bengal, founded by Sir William Jones in 1784, undertook the editing and printing and translation of all these scripts. Very, very important fact. Once the Mughals came into rule, they wanted to study the people and the culture and the custom of the people. So they wanted to read all this, all this, but they were not able to read because it was written in Persian and other languages. So they appointed a Asiatic Society of Bengal to edit, print, and translate. So, the edited versions of Akbarnama and Bashanama were first published by Asiatic Society in 19th century. Okay, edited and edited versions. In 20th century, Akbarnama was translated into English by Henry Beveridge after the years of hard labor. Very, very important. Who translated this? It is Henry Beveridge. But only some topics, except meaning some topics, Barsha Nama have been completely translated to date. The text in its entirety still awaits translation. मतलब बादशाह नामा का entire translation into English अभी तक नहीं हुआ है. Whereas अकबर नामा का translation completely English में हो चुका है. Whereas बादशाह नामा का only few parts. Completely कुछ भी translate नहीं हुआ, that's a wrong statement. लेकिन थोड़ा बहुत translate हुआ है, and that is no, the Basha Nama even today no awaits the translation of English in its entirety. So that is all about Basha Nama and Akbar Nama. Very, very important question. Any question can be asked. So what you are supposed to write is no, write a write a note on Badshah Nama, Akbar Nama, and Badshah Nama. Okay, so write separately. Badshah Nama के बारे में आप separately and Akbar Nama के बारे में separately. So that would be an important question. Fine. So so that's all for in this session. Till I see you in the next session. All of you, please take care. Bye bye.